Have you ever wondered about hallucinations? Do you have any questions about hypnotism or demon possession? We will answer all of those questions here in this video.
In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful. Today's subject is going to address a matter that a lot of people experience. I have read this in the ABC Australian news. There is an article about that, and the article actually is very thorough. I was putting the introduction about this. So it's a phenomenon. In ABC they call that hallucination. Basically, a lot of people, what happen is they see things. You know, like for example, they will see. It's kind of creepy subject. So you know, if this episode is going to be only for people who are mature enough. We'll say mature enough. Okay, so. Some people, they will say they have saw or witnessed something that is not there, or they are seeing things. Now in that article in ABC News Australia, and I'm gonna pull that out and I'm gonna show you the article and the date of that article. I think it was made on 2016, if I'm not mistaken. Posted Sunday. Yeah, here it is. Sunday, 13th of March 2016 at 6:30 p.m. by Anna Saleh, ABC Science. Okay, and the title of it: What happens in our brain when we hallucinate? Okay, so is the topic hallucination? Okay, well. What she said, the writer of this article, she said, voices in your head, vision of things that aren't there. You don't have to have schizophrenia or to take LSD to have a hallucination, and they do not always have to be scary either. All right, so I like that. So. She said hallucinations are actually fairly common. Now, there's a misconception. Krista was saying something about that. What you were saying about that? That hallucination is something that only on sleep.
I was saying that hallucination is something that you see when you're awake. If you're asleep, it's not called a hallucination. It's a dream or a nightmare. And if you hear something, they call that auditory.
It's called sleep paralysis, and it's a true waking nightmare.
I was held down by these living sort of ribbons that came across me and tightened up around me in paralysis.
When we dream, our brain switches off our ability to move so that we don't injure ourselves acting out those dreams. When we wake up, it switches us back on again. But sometimes the switch is out of sync, and we wake up paralyzed. Brian Sharpless, a clinical psychologist at Penn State, specializes in sleep paralysis research.
Sleep paralysis is the experience of either falling asleep or waking up and you find that you're paralyzed, but you have some degree of conscious awareness and your eyes are still able to move and you can look around the room. It's often a terrifying experience for people that are suffering from it, not only from the paralysis, but because of the hallucinations that often accompany it.
The hallucinations vary, but come in three general types. First, the intruder, an evil presence approaching. Second, the incubus, something pressing on your chest, choking or assaulting you. Finally, levitation, the sensation of being lifted off the bed and even transported elsewhere. Put them together, and you may have something strikingly familiar to a sleep researcher.
Experience, having a presence in the room, feeling if someone's on top of you, sexually assaulting you, or potentially levitating you.
Sleep paralysis is thought to be responsible, down through the ages, for numerous terrifying nighttime visitations.
Where one time or place might find witches, demons, ghosts, and spirits as an explanation for sleep paralysis, it's possible that 21st century Americans might find technologically advanced aliens as an explanation.
We take our guidance, we are the proponents of the Imam Nassir Mohamed Al Yamany. We are going to shed light on actually what is the true Islam Quranic elucidation explaining this phenomena. So now this phenomena is known in the scientific world, it's been there, everybody knows about it. And the misconception, I think it's not a misconception, but I think it's just a dual definition for the same matter. How is that? The hallucination, okay, is seeing or hearing things that aren't there. So they are not there. They are not there. It's like a hologram or something. They are not there. Now, when you sleep, also you could remember that you have visual hallucination, because you sometimes what they call nightmare is basically you see things and you are really scared out of it. Now, both under the Islamic under Imam Mahdi's explanation for a matter that has been brought to him by one of the proponents, and he asked him a question. The question is something got to do with traveling.
Astral projection is the reported ability of some people to separate their souls from their bodies. Now, while there is plenty of anecdotal evidence, scientists are still waiting for concrete proof of that phenomenon. We'll listen more, get the details, more details in this report.
Some people claim to have experienced having their soul separated from their physical body, a phenomenon called astral travel.
Everybody goes out in order to learn lessons in the spirit world.
Anthony Vivero's first time to astral travel was after a near-death experience. Anthony says ever since being revived and recovering, he has been able to heal people. He claims he now has the ability to will his soul to leave or return to his body at any time.
Mararamdaman mo yung paghila, mararamdaman mo yung paglutang mo, nakalutang ka, at mararamdaman mo yung pagkahulog pabalik sa katawan, hinahayaan ng makikapangyarihan.
Came to Imam Mahdi in the forum, he asked him a question about that, and after he asked the question, there's an elucidation of Quranic elucidation made by the Imam about this soul. I mean, I'm hoping that I'm translating right. In Arabic, they call it al-isqat al-najmi, but I think it's just a different name for the same thing, which is soul traveling. Basically, people they you know, it's a form actually that people get into, and they don't know how dangerous this matter is that they do it. وَالْعِيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ. we seek refuge by Allah from this. But this is to bring awareness to the subject. Now, we will continue with what the scientific world talked about this matter. So the scientific world, they have made this very simple in terms of why does it happen in that matter. And to my surprise, actually, that stand was also taken by Imam Mahdi, and he does not read any of this scientific stuff. His knowledge is directly from the Quran. So when he gives a verdict about whatever he's saying, and I find the scientific world having the same idea, then you could see there is that this thing is confirmed in the spiritual world and in the scientific world, and the reason behind it and how to approach it also. Okay, so it's recently found that nearly 1 in 20 in the general population, I think this is in Australia, hearing or seeing things. So you have, if you multiply that by billions, that's like 20 billions, right? Whatever the population in Australia is now. So if let's hallucination, it's a false perception of reality, and it can occur with a whole range of senses, but the most common ones are visual and auditory hallucination, said the Professor McGrath. So he said, normally, this is the professor quoted, normally our brain is good at distinguishing between a sound or image that is occurring in the outside world and one that is just a product of our mind. But occasionally something can go awry. So one major theory is that hallucinations are caused when something goes wrong in the relationship between the brain's frontal lobe, and I'm going to show you, of course, in the brain frontal lobe and the sensory cortex, said the neuropsychologist Professor Leif Waters from the University of Western Australia. For example, research suggests the auditory hallucination experienced by people with schizophrenia involve an overactive auditory cortex, the part of the brain that processes sound, said Professor Waters. This results in random sound and speech fragments being generated. Similarly, people with Parkinson's disease appears to have an overactive visual cortex, which results in images being generated in their brain of things that aren't actually there.
Do you believe that I could have supernatural powers, say, for example, and I could actually unscrew and take my head off? Do you believe I could do that? No. Does the audience believe I could do that?
No. The audience don't know, they're confused.
Okay, it's now time for the audience to count from 5,
4, 3, 2, 1!
Ladies and gents, give them a lovely round of applause.
Okay. So this is there's two parts: the visual cortex for the visual materials that we see, or the auditory cortex, okay, for the sounds. We'll continue what the article. She said the psychoactive drug could also upset the relationship between the sense processing parts of the brain and the frontal lobe in a similar way, said Professor Waters. quote, "it allows the processing of images and sound that would normally be inhibited," she said. The big question is whether the same kind of process are responsible for less extreme hallucination. Almost 2 out of 3 people having benign hallucinations. So now we went from 1 out of 20, but this is the what I was talking about, that everybody, they're saying 2 out of 3. I would say 3 out of 3. Everybody have a benign hallucination. Aren't always intrusive, negative, or scary, even in condition like schizophrenia. About 70% of healthy people experience benign hallucination when they are falling asleep.
Oh, falling asleep.
Falling asleep.
Yeah, I've read about that one before, when people are...
Here, I'll give you
I've heard about that when people are a bit like halfway between awake and asleep, and they're just on the edge of falling asleep, and they experience something called sleep paralysis. And sometimes during that time their body may feel frozen, and they hear things like, sounds like dishes crashing or windows breaking, and it's very, very real. And it's just part of that borderline there on the horizon between waking and sleeping. So here they're saying it's 70% of people experiencing hallucinations right at that point.
Right.
And it says here this includes hearing their name being called, the phone ringing, or seeing someone sitting at the end of their bed.
Edge of falling asleep. But this person, he said he was wide awake. He was somewhere in the desert or something like that in Africa. He has witnessed that he saw somebody just right there, and then he disappeared. Okay. Now we will tell people that there, God created other entities beside man, which are the jinn. These entities also, they have their limitations on how they can transform, or when they can appear to others and stuff like that. This is a FYI for the general public. Probably they don't know this common knowledge with but the Muslim, they know this knowledge, which is among the scholars and the general public. End of Quran, when you recite these verses, you are basically burning out this image from, or protecting yourself, and repelling these images for their transformation. You're stopping it from coming into fruition. They can't do it. I mean, it's just image that's a capability of their creation. They can't do that. Now,
a rainy city road as a dash cam films through the car's windshield. As he drives around a bend, an oncoming vehicle emerges on the opposite side. Then, shockingly, a figure appears out of nowhere. When this footage leaked online, it got people talking.
This doesn't look like something that should be possible.
What? There's no one there, and the car stops and he's there.
Even more bizarrely, after the vehicle comes to a halt, the man gets up from the ground and runs away seemingly uninjured.
You're just driving along the road, and then suddenly, out of nowhere, someone just pops up.
Ex-NYPD image analyst Connor McCourt studies the footage for clues.
So the mystery of this video is, where does this guy come from? That's the question. So what I'm going to do is pinpoint that moment in which he appears. The problem with this video is that it's low quality. There's a lot of digital compression, and we also have raindrops all over the windshield. This isn't going to be an easy one. We're going to have to do some digging and think outside the box.
Such a bizarre incident so close to a weird, world-renowned science lab has excited some wild speculation straight out of sci-fi. But the disturbing thing is, the most far-out notions often have some basis in fact and science.
So you see this person appearing from nowhere, and you can almost say it's like teleportation.
Now,
Physicists
the premier imam Nassir Mohamed Al Yamany, he has explained that غاسق إذا وقب. This is a term or two words in the verses of the last chapters of the Quran in Surah Al-Falaq. Everybody can see what I'm talking about, but it says غاسق إذا وقب. And غاسق إذا وقب here it means from, and I seek refuge from.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
قل أعوذ برب الفلق من شر ما خلق ومن شر غاسق إذا وقب.
That who appears suddenly. So in the Quran it did phrase that غاسق إذا وقب. So it did phrase that there is this entity that it tells us humans that God has this entity that it can appear, with article. Research into this kind of hallucination is in its very early days, said Professor Waters. In the past 100 years, it's always been about schizophrenia, but in the past couple of years, so this is 2015, so we say 2013. So it's in the past couple of years, we've suddenly ramped up investigation outside schizophrenia, she said. We're still trying to understand whether there are different forms of hallucination or whether there is only one type that takes different shapes. And what makes a hallucination distressing in some situations and not in others. Professor Waters' best guess is that everyday hallucination may share common mechanism with more serious hallucination. So that's true. She said factors include lack of sleep, stress, grief, and trauma could make the brain more vulnerable to hallucination by upsetting the relationship between the sensory cortex and frontal lobe. So this is very very interesting. You could, if somebody lack of sleep, or they're stressed in their life, or they have so much grief or some kind of a trauma, they are more vulnerable to hallucination. That's very 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 true. I think she nailed that. So when you lack of sleep, yes. That so you got a good point, because so somebody can you repeat that so you can.
I said even something as simple as someone being diabetic and they wake up every 2 hours to go to the restroom, that would cause a serious lack of sleep, and that could lead to hallucinations, visual or auditory.
So we'll continue with the article. The quote, but when we have lack of sleep and stress and grief, then our frontal lobe just goes on holiday a little bit and doesn't have that supervisory capacity anymore, and it lets the sensory cortex just do what it wants. Interestingly, certain hallucinations are seen as part of normal life, and indeed encouraged in some cultures, said Professor Waters. In some cultures, it's acceptable, for example, to hear the voices of your dead relatives, she said. Professor McGrath agreed. Some cultures are more likely to hear the voice of God or the voice of the devil, he said. On the other hand, the biblical and the Quranic also confirmation of people hearing the voice of God, like Prophet Moses, that's a fact, that's not a hallucination, it's a reality. the stories behind that, you know, the children of Israel, and all proven historical events that happened, and miracles of in the metaphysical world. For example, like this, you know, like the stick that being by the word be, it was transformed into a real living, breathing snake, which is, this is just to prove that here this is the true metaphysical world, and this is a reality of things that happen, and it was not hallucination when this event happened to the magicians and in front of Prophet Moses, peace be upon him, and all the prophets. But that being said, let's go back to the end of this. See, he said young people were more prone to hallucination, and this could be because their brain circuitry was less robust. They may say, I hear voices at 14, and then you ask them at 21 and they don't have them anymore. Okay, now what did we learn? We learned that the frontal lobe is basically our you know, driver, and if you are somehow got that frontal lobe affected, you know, numbed or by this, yeah, distress. But this is, yeah, this is what the scientific world is able to monitor. So they will say stress, lack of sleep, you know, trauma, grief. So anything that affects the emotions. Now, there is something that the Imam Mahdi say, and a conclusion from my part also about another stage events, and I'm going to show that stage events as well. What it is, it's about we go back to our subject that we were talking about, the subject of soul travel. Staged. Oh no, it's stage of event, not stage event. It's not staged. It's not. It's actual reality. You know, when they do this. But first, let's explain how the premier Imam Nassir Mohamed Al Yamany have explained the matter of this soul travel thing. Okay. First of all, of course, I'm going to summarize what he says. You know, he's always, you know, it's in Arabic. He has a website, and we have translated some of his elucidations of Quran in a website. We called it the elucidation of Quran. Now, he said in this, the name of Allah, the most merciful, the continuous merciful, and peace prayers on all of the prophets of from God and their family and whoever follows them at any moment in time, in any place, till Judgment Day. Now this elucidation, it was made on the 28th of July 2013, 10 a.m. It's corresponding to the calendar, or the moon calendar. It's the 9th month, the 21st day of the 9th month, 1434 Hijri. The name of the elucidation in Arabic, فتوى عن السفر النجمي بأنه مصيدة وضعها الشيطان ليتصيد بها الباحث عن السفر فيخترق جسده مس شيطان الرجيم. So this is a verdict about the soul traveling. Safar al-Najmi is actually, they call it, I mean, if it's a literal translation, it will be like
astral projection or astral travel is a term used in esotericism to describe an intentional out-of-body experience, abbreviated OBE, that assumes the existence of a soul or consciousness called an astral body that is separate from the physical body and capable of traveling outside it throughout the universe. The idea of astral travel is ancient and occurs in multiple cultures. The modern terminology of astral projection was coined and promoted by 19th century theosophists. It is sometimes reported in association with dreams and forms of meditation. Some individuals have reported perceptions similar to descriptions of astral projection that were induced through various hallucinogenic and hypnotic means, including self-hypnosis. There is no scientific evidence that there is a consciousness whose embodied functions are separate from normal neural activity, or that one can consciously leave the body and make observations. And astral projection has been characterized as a pseudoscience.
Middle East for that. But he's saying this is just a trap. It's a trap, you know, kind of like you know, you have a mouse trap. The devils, these entities, they have also traps for human beings. So this is a trap that the shaitan have constructed to catch with it those who are seeking this type of traveling, and then it will penetrate his body with the touch of his with the touch of a satanic. The person has to have the vulnerability to seek such a thing, like he believes in it, like he wants it. So always the intention, like even people, you know, the discipline that's called self-development, they're always looking, you know, they tell you that if you concentrate on something or you look for something, you're always going to get that thing. You'll find it. Now, the same thing, if you're susceptible to that type of environment, or you're seeking it, then you, unfortunately, that's the worst thing that a person can get. And you have to be also very, very smart, because some people shifts clothing, yeah. So what it is, so he explained it. So like I said, I'm going to summarize, I'm not going to read the whole thing. So he explained it that this is a spirit. It's a devilish spirit, a rotten spirit. Okay, it will take over the body in its action. That happens when that spirit enters and it goes all the way to the brain. So now, remember earlier we have found out in the Australian professor, he said there is a disconnection between the frontal lobe and the cortex, the visual cortex or the auditory cortex. So this spirit, or this light thing that enters the body, it can go inside and it blocks that. I think this is how I'm picturing it, because what it is somehow it's able to numb the frontal lobe, but also to take over the cerebral cortex and not the cerebral cortex, the visual cortex and the auditory cortex. Because the imam here, he just said it, you know, to the brain, at the mouth. Okay, so but now the detail of that in the scientific world is the visually is the visual cortex and the auditory cortex. Now he said, the premier Imam Nassir Mohamed Al Yamany, he said, but this, in Arabic they call it bas shaitan. Shaitan is devil, so bas shaitan, inhabited by the devil. He says that the devil possessing this body is not capable of flying with the body, but it is capable inside. So because he controls the brain, he's capable inside to move the body parts. Okay, catch this, to move the body parts. So in the same way that if this person who is unconscious is able to move his body with his soul, because his soul is the one that actually moves the body. Okay, so if this spirit, like your soul spirit, your soul also spirit, it controls the body. If this other soul came inside and it's able to, it will be able to control the body. Then this evil spirit, it will be able images to the person who is possessed of things as if they are in reality. Visual, which exactly. So this is visual hallucination. He will be able to, if he goes to the brain, this spirit, this lightweight thing, spirit, that's the best I can come up with, which is a spirit is able to go there and it's able to control and give you images as if it occurred and it did not occur, as if it, and that is part of the magic. It's magic, kind of like the black magic, but this is their magic to the imagination of a human being. Okay, so they have that power, and he does that in order to convince the possessed person to do other things, and one of these things is to associate partners with God, but he's not going to tell them in the beginning. So, and all of the Muslim sects, when their scholars, they know about this cunning plot by Satan or the devil. So they recite to the believers of the Quran, because the Quran, you have to believe in it. You have to believe. So if you are a believer of the Quran, there are certain verses from the Quran, not all of the Quran, certain verses in the Quran will heal from this type of magic or possession or evil eye. These three subjects, we could explore what they mean in other episodes, but basically these are the ones. So the fatwa is, basically for believers, they should not even go and interact with this type of activities, because it's basically, this is a way or a portal that these entities, devilish entities, jinns, are able to find a way in. And if a human being fall into this trap, like a mouse fall into, like a cat trap or something, or in a human trap, and then he falls. But here he is the prey. That just scared the cats. Okay, something fell and scared the cats. Okay, so now I think it's either my talk and this fails, and I think they know. They are spooked. Okay. So they will be able to penetrate a human by that trap. But here it's really a big disaster for the person who's under this possessed body, because the whole entire world would not be able, and this is very, very critical, if the imam, which is the premier imam, and his talk is so divine, he would not give a mistake when he say will never. He said no one in the entire world will be able to take out this from his from the body of this possessed person, except the creator. If he repent, he followed the true book, from God, repent from what he did, that he's going to this trap and he was trying to find about soul traveling and all
for various
that.
reasons.
So
divine beings called Reiki guides sometimes assist in healing. Okay, so you've got these Reiki guides assisting in the healing, laying their hands on your body alongside the Reiki master. Some people are surprised by this because there's only one person in the room, yet they can feel other hands on their body. I think it might be useful just to show this page as well here of the process, the laying on of hands there. Some more things. This is on page 12. It says, before starting one of the Reiki sessions, this is when you're actually giving the healing. Before starting, say a silent prayer for guidance and help from the Reiki guide. So it's encouraging you here to pray to these things, and there's no explanation as to what these things actually are even. Then you can end the treatment by silently thanking these guides. So we're talking about guides and spirits here. Can you see how it's like a form of spiritualism? Okay, and then there's this process called attunements, which basically sort of changes the vibrational level of you and your aura by rewiring, is the word that's used here, the subtle energy channels in our finer bodies through transmission. Now, it talks about a number of things that you do here, placing the Reiki symbols on the person's body, and the procedures performed by the Reiki master, but controlled by universal wisdom and attended and guided by astral Reiki guides. So here they are again. And it says at the bottom, this is page 17, once Reiki is activated by an attunement, it is always with you. Even if you reject it, it says, even if you reject it and just dismiss it as foolishness and never have anything to do with it again, it's going to remain with you, and you can come back to it at any time because it's there. It never goes, it doesn't leave you. It's like this thing is stuck with you. You're stuck with it. Once you've got this, you're stuck with it. And presumably the Reiki guides as well. So these are like forces that are beyond the Reiki master's control. So just to recap, Reiki guides are present at this thing called attunements. They are called upon, prayed to and thanked during a healing. Sometimes they are felt by those who are being healed with all the different hands on a person, and they are beyond the Reiki master's control. Now, a secular source here that I promised you. This is from Woman's Magazine, Chat, issue 36, 6th of September 1997, page 6, and the article is entitled I Speak with Forked Tongue. There's a picture of the lady there with her Reiki master, and she claims that she had some beneficial experiences with Reiki, but she said there was an unusual side effect. And I'll just read you what it says at the end of this article. One afternoon I sat down, inhaled deeply and visualized the Reiki symbols. Then I felt heat soar through me. My body started to shake. Then this booming male voice suddenly filled the room. It sounded like a Red Indian chief from an old John Wayne movie. And you know what the scariest thing of all was? It was coming from inside me. I was speaking in a forked tongue. I tried not to, but I couldn't stop myself. Bathed in sweat, I phoned John Shango, he was the Reiki master who she had contact with, and was relieved to hear my own voice. That's wonderful, Jill, he exclaimed. You've been chosen by the Reiki healing spirits. They'll be your companions forever now. Going back to that thing again really before in the manual, isn't it, about these things never leaving you, this whole thing just remaining with you even if you reject it. They'll be with you forever now. Since then I've had 35 different ones speaking through me. There's Dr. Yushi, the Japanese man who founded Reiki, Little Flower with their lilting voice, Chief Sitting Bull who always sounds angry, and many more. I can talk to them all, whenever I want, I just ask them out loud to answer me, and they always do. I feel like a very exotic telephone exchange. Now these things are obviously living in this woman. They're using her voice, they've got possession of her voice box, they speak through her. She didn't really sign up for this, but these are the spirits that are operational through this practice, Reiki. It's a form of spiritualism at the end of the day. It's not just a healing practice, as a lot of people initially think. There's much more to it than that. So if you're thinking of getting interested in this thing and pursuing it, you need to know that this is going to open you up to spirits, contact with spirits, and as long as you know this, you can make an informed decision. But this might not be something that you'll find out up front. I'm telling you in advance, then you can make your own choice.
And all that. So the imam, or the premier imam, gives an advice. He said, fear your Lord. People with, who have a mind to, they can grasp with. This is very beautiful sentence. I think it's very beautiful because a lot of people, they have mind, but they don't grasp what they hear, and they do not, act upon what they hear.
Not everyone that's hallucination was at one point interested in soul travel.
Yeah. Okay. That's here. What you just said. We will continue this.
I said not everyone who has hallucinations was ever interested at one point in soul travel.
Okay, so that is true. Hallucination is it goes into the second part also, which is the part that talks about dreaming. I'm making a connection here to explain it. The connection is, if a bad dream happens to a person, that means what? It's not that magic thing. I sort of say it is. It's the soul of the person himself reflecting pictures in his mind. Okay. Exactly.
Lack of oxygen. Let's say someone has sleep apnea and they're not getting much oxygen because they stop breathing repeatedly during the night. This can cause bad images and nightmares.
Well, that's what I'm saying. From the self, I'm saying is here is the self, the shaitan, the soul of the human being itself. It's prone to be bad as well. You don't have to have the jinn to there is the human himself. Inside of us, we're body and soul. Our body is just a vehicle. It's kind of like the car. The soul is the driver. The soul is what we do is basically from the soul. And the soul,
That's causing stress. Lack of oxygen is causing stress, and it's interfering with their connection.
here, talk.
So I'm saying here, I think the lack of oxygen, I was saying if someone has sleep apnea and they stop breathing repeatedly during the night and it causes a lack of oxygen, that itself causes stress. But even the lack of oxygen can affect the brain and affect the relationship between those parts that we saw in the earlier article, the sensory cortex and the frontal lobe is what it mentioned. So yeah, if even the lack of oxygen can affect that and lead to nightmares.
So this would be a chemical part, but there are other parts where your cerebral I think this is just, I mean, we're just chatting. Maybe people who have comments, their comments after watching this video, they will tell us what they think about this. But also, it's that we, we can produce images in our head, in our the cerebral cortex. Let's say without the LCD, huh? Oh, not the cerebral cortex, I'm sorry, the visual cortex or the auditory cortex. If one of the yeah, so according to that study, that the frontal lobe will kind of be will be asleep, I guess, and then if the cortex, the visual cortex or the auditory, they were triggered, grief triggers it, stress triggers. Yeah. Right. 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 But also that does not mean that also that that we are vulnerable to these entities also because of stress, because of grief, because of that. So they try to attack that area as but it's not as an actual portal thing. They can maybe like talk in our ears where somebody can hear voices and stuff like that. Yeah. Yes, that's why my conclusion as well, that
I was saying if the jinn can get inside our bodies, perhaps they can interrupt that connection between.
Perhaps, I think I agree. I think that's what happens. They interrupt, that's how they control it.
They'll interrupt the connection between the frontal lobe and the sensory cortex. And then if that connection's interrupted, there's a lack of control, and then the sensory cortex, not being controlled, will do whatever it wants and create images, whether auditory or visual.
Right.
So the jinn can cause this to happen.
Right. Well, also, now I'm going to thrill you with something else that is very, very interesting, which is, have you heard about hypnotizers? Oh my God! So that is scary. Now the imam here is saying something that is very, very interesting, and that is that that whatever entity it is that goes inside the brain, people who go for hypnotization and go to a therapist, so-called therapist, okay, they are vulnerable because they are going there willingly. They are seeking that to go to their past. They will tell them, hey, you will go to your past and all that stuff. Now, the so-called hypnotist, he said some of them they will claim that they have, that's just just look at here and all that stuff. Basically, what they are trying to say, focus. You're susceptible. You're vulnerable. You are willingly open. You leave yourself in open to habitation. That's why they are able to control. So, but who controls them at that moment? At that moment, that makes me what?
As it spreads down your shoulders, go into it further. You know what that would feel like, don't you? Because as you allow this feeling of relaxation to come upon you in a way that is completely comfortable, allowing you to get completely relaxed, listening to this. If anybody around you makes noise or touches you, that's okay. Go further.
I said there's a lot of how to self-hypnotize. So, but someone seeking to be hypnotized does leave themselves open to inhabitation by a jinn. But I have seen, I don't know if it's one person who's doing this special hypnotization or if there's more than one, but I've seen this one who can mass hypnotize audiences, and he touches them and it causes a reaction about whether they start doing something. They think they're flying. They completely act like something else, and it's when he touches them on the head, it's really scary, really, really scary. And that guy, maybe he might be in league with jinn. I think he has some kind of relationship with them, and he knows what's going on. But I think the majority of doctors don't know. They're just they know how to get someone into that. They know how to get someone into that state of mind where they are vulnerable and open to inhabitation by a jinn.
Right. But the interesting subject, I just remember something. There are some religious sects from the Christian side where they do that, where they come to the person, they touch them, and they suddenly they will fall if they are not accomplices. Yeah, if they are not accomplices, but they are vulnerable. They go for that, and then they lose conscious. What is it? Pentecostals. United Pentecostals. Uh-huh.
I was raised in the United Pentecostal Church. I've seen this. They call it being slain in the spirit. It was a lot of prayer, and they're speaking in tongues. It's like something just comes over you, and you start speaking in another language. Sometimes there's someone there who is an interpreter, and they can interpret what is being said, supposedly. Of course, we don't really know. As I grew up and found Islam, I came to believe that those were jinn that were inhabiting us, that made us what they call dance in the spirit and run in the spirit. Something would take over our bodies, and it would cause us to run or dance or gyrate or anything and speak in other tongues. And so now I think that it was jinn inhabiting us, and a jinn was also inhabiting the person who was providing the interpretation for the speaking in tongues.
Or he was an accomplice who knows that this was going to happen, and he was a medium.
And some people think, that the people involved are accomplices.
Right.
But I was 9 years old the first time I spoke in tongues. I was not an accomplice. I was not going into this knowingly.
Okay.
It's not a trick.
Right.
It's not something we were all engaged in, because our audience was only each other. It's not like we were trying to put on a show and convince anyone else. It's just the way we worshipped every time we went to church.
Right.
So it's just a normal thing. And
but that's something that's been added to the true religion of Christianity. It's not part of Christianity or what Jesus has instructed. These are additional things that people have put in.
I hope you can be heard here. Well, so we were called apostolics, not Protestants, not the others. There's in the Bible, in the New Testament, sad to say I don't remember enough about it, but
it's okay, I can't look it up. It's all right.
Yeah, they talk about the tongues, the speaking in tongues,
right,
and it was
verse, yeah. But
and it has the word apostolic in it.
Right.
That's why we were called apostolic.
I think,
that's where we get it from.
I read Bob Ehrenberg. I think that these verses were added to the Bible. They are not part of the original manuscript. And some people, they can go and look Bart Ehrenberg. I think that's what's his name. Yeah.
It was, the day that they spoke in tongues. It's recounted in the Bible. They spoke in tongues.
True.
The day of Pentecost.
Right. It's not. Yeah, that's what people. No, the verses. There is an old manuscript. The manuscript that was found about the Bible. They did not find these verses about speaking in tongues and all that in the original manuscripts. So the historians, like Mr. Bart Ehrman, a professor of theology in an institute in North Carolina, I don't recall exactly the name of that institute, but anyway, it's a Christian theology institute, and what they do is they look at the original manuscript, and there's a lot of verses in today's Bible. People, they take it for granted. They think, hey, these verses, this is the Bible, this is how it is all the time. But what happened is there are original manuscripts, meaning that there are thousands of many manuscripts, and this original one, the oldest one, they did not have these verses. So where did they come from? So meaning that it's been added to it. You got what I'm saying? So that's so even the base for this belief is not part of what God revealed. Now, people, they need to check and see what I just said. Is it true? Is it wrong? And we are giving, our point of view on this, so people will be able to see how can they get cured from schizophrenia and from Parkinson's disease. I think there's a big possibility that if people adhere to the Quran, because the Quran is, if you have to believe in something, and if you believe in it, then this effect of it will help that person to recover from this major psychological, I would call them psychological disorders. Yes, they are disorders. Schizophrenia is a big thing, and then the other one is I think he said Parkinson's disease. So these two, I hope maybe there's going to be some kind of a research on those two. We want to see it. Maybe I'm thinking about a documentary. Somebody goes, have somebody with schizophrenia, believe in the Quran, see if he recite 1 hour for 1 hour now, of 1 continuous hour, then he will recite certain verses of the Quran, which basically the verses that talk about the majesty of God, the bounty of God, which is in Arabic is known as a ruqya sharia. They can, listen, yeah, it's going to be a session. It's a 1 hour session, and like in any other type of healing sessions and meditation session, the person has to listen for that ruqya sharia for 1 hour. Ruqya sharia, only verses of the Quran, certain verses, like I said, that about the power, the mighty of God, and the bounties of God. It's a collection of verses. So in any case, when the person, not all of the Quran, of course, because there are some, like for example, the Surah Yusuf is like the premier Imam said, like, some certain verses are not made for that. The healing are special parts. So what I'm saying here is from the premier Imam Nassir Mohamed Al Yamany. He said 1 hour, these ruqya sharia verses, and then you do it once, and then some people, they will heal right away. Some people, maybe they need a few more sessions, but never give up. Never give up. When you do these sessions, it will 100% heal that person. So I hope everybody has enjoyed their time listening to this episode, and we hope you will subscribe to our channel and hit the bell button and like, so this video will help others who wants to be helped with this. Thank you and have a good day. And this is our channel slogan, so I hope you do this as well with us.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم
قل أعوذ برب الفلق من شر ما خلق ومن شر غاسق إذا وقب ومن شر النفاثات في العقد ومن شر حاسد إذا حسد.